In the previous episode, I was trying to buy a yacht damaged in Hurricane Beryl on the other side of the world in Carriacou, a small outlier island of Grenada in the Caribbean. But the Boatyard and Salvager were pulling the strings in the Salvager's favour as he tried to buy several yachts, including Bennie, whilst at the same time quoting exorbitant prices to lift them and right them in an obvious tactic to get the yacht owners affected by the hurricane to sell to him for next to nothing. A massive thanks to all of my legendary subscribers that looked at the inspection footage from the last episode and commented or gave advice and opinions. There were some really great points of view in there, and as this is all a massive learning experience, I was so grateful to be able to get so much advice from this awesome community. And because I had so much great input, I think I've been able to make the right decision, as I'll explain in this episode. Apologies that it took a few days to answer everyone's comments too. I was out at the Sanctuary Cove International Boat Show in Queensland this last weekend, hanging out and looking at boats with fellow YouTuber Danny, who you might know better as $1 Million Bogan.
You want to plug your channel?
Nah.
So I was a bit late answering. The Sanctuary Cove Boat Show stuff I'll post in a future episode. My deadline for making an offer had come and gone, and the Beneteau 50 could be sold from under my nose at any time by the insurer, but I wasn't going to make an offer until I had a reasonable idea of what the damage could be. Stuart's video showed that there was most likely only a small amount of superficial damage on the hull, and after reading through and answering over 200 comments and opinions, the overwhelming majority was positive. But a few people who said not to go for it also made some very good points, and I appreciate all of it and definitely took note. After looking even closer at the video and pictures, I discovered that by some miracle the mast, which was 60 feet long and had broken at 2 points, had somehow not collapsed onto the upper deck, so the deck had absolutely no fiberglass or other damage. The damage was a destroyed mast, 2 bent stanchions where the yacht had leaned against a neighbouring boat as it fell, likely cushioning its impact with the ground. There was a big gouge in the side where she had collided with one of her stands, the only other thing being a bent bolt from the port side shroud chain plate. There was also some small and probably only superficial paint and sealant cracking near the keel seam. That little spider crack though didn't go unnoticed and needed to be checked, but due to Benny still being on her side, Stuart couldn't get in safely. And although it wasn't a proper survey, there was nothing more than that to indicate a large chance of any major damage. Things at this stage were leaning to the positive. With the pressure on to make a solid offer on Benny, another factor had started to come into play: looting. As mentioned in an earlier episode, yachts that had fallen in the yard were getting ransacked and looted. Many tens of thousands of dollars of equipment like expensive electronics and hardware like winches, even engines, solar power accessories, instruments, you name it, was disappearing at a very quick rate from the boats that were on the ground and some in the nearby lagoon. And the security of the yard, obviously not helped by a blacked out yard due to no power, seemed to be either non-existent or completely powerless to stop it. As an example, one particular boat in the yard, and one that was probably most similar to Benny, was this Yacht 51, which was offered to me previously. After a couple of months, that Yacht 51 was getting ransacked night after night and was almost completely stripped bare of anything valuable, virtually making her a complete loss to her very unfortunate owners, who sadly, and quite accidentally, didn't have the correct insurance and also didn't have on hand the huge amounts of cash being asked for by the salvager to have her lifted up and righted. As a result, this once beautiful yacht is still laying on her side in the yard and has been almost stripped bare. After I was made aware of this horrible situation, I was also told by Benny's previous owner, Kay, that the looting had now begun on Benny. The B&G Vulcan multifunction display had been stolen. And possibly the only reason that more hadn't been stolen from Benny was because just prior to Hurricane Beryl, by sheer fluke, she had been placed very close to and in direct line of sight of the Yacht office. But I was almost sure that as more boats were lifted up and opportunities dried up, thieves would become more brazen in their attempts and Benny would very soon again become a target. So before I made any offer, I needed to be cautious and ask more questions. Now I'm just speculating here, because I don't know for sure. But after having a think about everything, I now had to ask myself the question, is it possible that the yard could be benefiting from the looting? Now I know to some of you this may be controversial and not make sense, but it's an easy conclusion to draw once you kind of see what's going on. I'll explain. You see, in many boatyards, and this boatyard was probably no exception, the yard will take a service fee, usually a percentage of the total value of around say 15% of any subcontracted works that are performed on the yacht stored there. But here's what's wrong with that in this situation. Quite simply put, in that situation, a boatyard has no incentive to allow the owners or insurers to get the boats lifted cheaply. As a matter of fact, mightn't it be more plausible that if they're taking a commission on the works performed, then they actually have a financial incentive to see that the people are charged as much as possible? Wouldn't it seem even more plausible if a boatyard then created a situation where a salvager was given a monopoly in that yard to charge exorbitantly high amounts? Because we know that happened. And wouldn't it be even more plausible again if the yard possibly created or exacerbated situations that almost forced people to use that salvager and pay his exorbitant rates of up to $20,000 to lift some boats? One of these situations could be something like maybe not stepping up security so that more boats got looted. Another may be a bogus idea, like threatening owners with double and triple storage costs if they didn't get their boats lifted. The rationale being that then boats are taking up more space, even though there was plenty of room in the yard. Or maybe threatening owners to lift boats because another hurricane might come. And I get that some people might say, well, that's the cost of doing that kind of specialised salvage work. It's dangerous, heavy lifting work, and you can't really compare it to anything. Except that maybe we can. Because another yard a kilometre away, with the same kind of boats, and just as, if not more difficult recoveries due to the steep and confined access, charged boat owners just $800 East Caribbean dollars for each boat for the same service. But yet again, this is a subject for another video at another time, soon. Because I'm just scraping the tip of the iceberg of what went on here. I haven't even started on how these boats were chocked or strapped down and the condition of some of the anchor points. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that one.
Arr, shiver me timbers.
Around this time I received word that the crane company who had been working under contract to the salvage company in the yard were about to end their contract and leave, but they'd still be on the island for a few days. So naively, I contacted them via email and they gave me a quote for lifting Benny of $1,500. It's important to note that at this stage, I had no reason to believe that the crane company might not be able to re-enter the yard to perform the lift. I had no idea about boatyards at this stage and how they worked, including their service fees and that boatyards could stop people from coming into their yards for whatever reason and performing subcontracted works. I just thought the salvager's leaving because he probably has other places he needs to be, and then with him gone, I could go direct to the crane company. What a silly, naive boy I was. I now added up all of my possible costs. The cost of the purchase of the yacht, together with a new mast, or a repair or a second-hand one if I was lucky, the possible repairs to the hull and possible storage of 12 months whilst all of this happened, and I came up with a best and worst case scenario figure. I also went online to look at what these yachts sell for and found a few, including this one, which was almost identical. The asking price, $165,000 was twice what I thought my worst case scenario figure was. Mind you, I naively thought that a new mast, rigging and installation on a 50-foot boat would cost around 15,000 Australian. Yep, I can hear you laughing from here. You guys and girls actually remember what this channel's called, right? You know I went into this knowing nothing, right? Okay, now I felt ready as... You alright, El Rositas? Thank you. Now I felt as ready as I could be. I'd covered my bases as best as I could from a laptop on the other side of the world, and based on these numbers, I typed up an offer. By now, I'd spoken to several other owners of boats in the yard who had also been contacted by the Salvager. Two of these boats in particular were very similar to Bennie in size and condition, and both owners had been offered exactly the same lowball amount, so I was pretty confident I knew exactly what to offer to win the tender. For these tips and more on buying a hurricane damaged yacht, check out my upcoming Patreon video that should drop in a few weeks. The time came to put it all on the line. This little decision could completely transform my life, and I knew it. This was about way more than a boat. My nerves were going crazy. My palms were sweaty. Arms were heavy. There's mum's spaghetti on my sweater already. Or something.
Don't waste your time watching this show.
Way past my deadline, I rang the insurer and spelled out my offer. She put her hand over the phone and I heard her muffled voice as she relayed the terms of the offer to another person in the room. That muffled decision went on with another voice in the background as I waited for what seemed like half an hour, but it was probably only a few minutes. And I knew that the longer it went on, the less chance I had. Then a voice came back. Are you there? Yeah? I sent the deposit, got back the receipt within a couple of minutes, and took one of the most relieved breaths of air I'd ever taken. I sat there in silence, stunned, and pictured myself sailing. My dream was starting. In those few minutes of stunned silence, my thoughts turned to my dad. He also had a similar sailing dream, but was now too old, frail and ill to do any of it. It almost brought a tear to my eye. And the journey that I'd been on since an accident where an idiot almost killed me 18 months ago had just taken its biggest step. But in reality, I didn't even know if I'd be capable of sailing. But I knew one thing. I was the owner of a beautiful Beneteau 50. But if I thought I was home free, boy did I have a surprise coming. The Salvager was about to make contact, and he was not happy, and he wasn't done with me or Bennie the Beneteau. G'day legends, I hope you enjoyed that. These videos take a lot of editing and writing, so a little like and subscribe would really help us to boost the channel, and it's totally free. Also, I love hearing from you guys and about where you're from, so drop us a hello and include the place you're from in the comments and tell us what you think so far. See you in the next one.